On March 23, 2019, 16-year-old Angela Regia left her home with a promise to her parents. She would return by evening. She was headed to a gathering, a birthday celebration among familiar faces. It was supposed to be a safe event, nothing unusual, just a night of fun. But as night fell, everything changed. Her phone went silent, calls went unanswered, and the people who had spent the night with her began to act strangely. Some behaved as if nothing had happened. Others seemed nervous, like they were hiding something. Late that night, her parents received a call. It was meant to clarify what had happened, but instead, it only raised more questions. Stories didn't match. The details were inconsistent. Every new version of the night contradicted the last. Some spoke too little, others too much. What really happened to Angela that night? Why didn't anyone go looking for her immediately? And what were the people around her hiding? This disappearance would soon unravel into a chain of mysteries, where every answer led to more confusion. Before we explore the case, if you'd like to support the channel, hit the subscribe button and stay active. It really helps a lot. Now, let's get into it. Angela Adja was born in 2002 into a loving and supportive family. Her parents, Anil Daniel Adja and Usagar, worked hard to give their daughters a stable, caring home. Her father, an engineer at a government company, was strict but fair, always placing his family's well-being above all else. Her mother ran a small hair salon from home, where neighbors and even Anhola's friends would often stop by. Their home was always filled with life, conversations, laughter, the daily noise of a happy household. Angela was especially close to her older sister, Natalie. More than just siblings, they were best friends. They shared secrets, talked about their future, and leaned on each other for support. In her free time, Angela helped her mother in the salon. She had a passion for beauty. She loved experimenting with makeup, creating new looks, and doing manicures for her friends, who were always impressed by her creativity. She was outgoing, full of energy, and deeply kind-hearted. Making friends came easily to her. She had a natural charm and a lightness that made people feel at ease. But she also had a thoughtful side. She often reflected on her future, wondering what career she would choose and how she could make something meaningful of her life. Her parents taught her and her sister the importance of hard work, empathy, and helping others. Their home was a place where everyone felt welcome. No one could have imagined that this world, built on love and warmth, would one day be shattered. Jose Alberto Chedo came from a very different background. His family was wealthy. His father was a businessman, and his mother had deep connections in elite social circles. Because of this, Jose had access to privileges that most teenagers could only dream of. He owned expensive items, had exclusive memberships, and enjoyed the freedom to travel and live with few restrictions. Angela met him through mutual friends about 3 years earlier. At first, she didn't pay him much attention. But over time, they began to see each other more often within the same social circles. To Angela, Jose Alberto was just a friend, nothing more. But to him, she was something else. He was persistent, constantly messaging her, finding excuses to be near her, always asking to spend time together. Angela never returned his feelings. His attention made her uncomfortable. She told her friends that he had asked her out several times, but she always said no. At one gathering by the pool, her friends playfully pushed her into the water. Soaked, she asked Jose Alberto for help finding something to change into. He suggested going somewhere private, implying something more. Angela immediately refused. After that, she kept her distance. She avoided one-on-one interactions, grew more guarded, and told her close friends that his attention was starting to make her feel uneasy. But avoiding him completely wasn't easy. Their social circles overlapped. They had the same friends. She had to tolerate his presence, even if it made her uncomfortable. That brings us to the day everything changed. March 23, 2019. That morning, Angela woke up excited. Her best friend was having a birthday party, and she wanted to go. But when she asked her parents for permission, the answer was a firm no. The neighborhood where the party was being held wasn't considered safe. Her parents didn't want to take the risk. Angela tried to convince them, promising to get there safely by car. But her mother and father stood their ground. Disappointed, she messaged her friends, venting about how strict her parents were. Later that same morning, she received a message from Jose Alberto. It was his birthday too. He invited her to celebrate with him, first at a private club, then at a place called Leia Island, a secluded party spot accessible only by boat. Angela hesitated. She wasn't able to go to her friend's party, and this seemed like a way to still enjoy the evening. She agreed, but she didn't tell her parents the full truth. If they knew the gathering was on an island, they would never have let her go. That evening, she told her parents she was going to a small, safe gathering. She mentioned that a relative of the host would be there to chaperone. It would be a calm, private event, she said. Her parents were hesitant, but they had already said no earlier that day, and they didn't want to upset her again. They knew Jose Alberto, and they understood that they couldn't shield Angela from every social interaction. After more convincing, her father agreed, but with strict rules: no drinking, regular phone check-ins, and she had to be home on time. As evening approached, Angela carefully got ready. She stood in front of the mirror, choosing an outfit. She first considered a dress, but settled on something more comfortable: shorts and a light blouse, perfect for an outdoor party. She braided her hair and applied light makeup. Her father drove her to the club, mostly quiet during the ride. Before she stepped out, he reminded her, "If anything feels wrong, call me immediately." A small group had already gathered near the club. Angela waited. She couldn't enter without a chaperone. Minutes later, Jose Alberto arrived. He greeted her, ignored her father, and took her hand. She quickly kissed her father goodbye and walked off with Jose. That was the last time her family would ever see her alive. Outside the club, Jose told her the real party was already happening on Leia Island. The island was located in the middle of the Coron River, accessible only by boat. He promised it was safe. Only people he trusted would be there. The boat was already waiting, he said. If she didn't come, she'd be left behind alone. Angela didn't want to stand out. She didn't want to seem rude or afraid, so she agreed to go. The boat was owned by Jose Alberto's godfather, Jose Zorrilla, a well-known businessman who, despite his age, often hosted events for younger crowds. On board were several others: Zorrilla's son, Bloomberg, his girlfriend, Jocelyn Barrero, and two family friends, Orlando Salazar and Wilma Diaz. All of them were significantly older than Angela. As the boat pulled away from shore, city lights disappeared behind them. On board, passengers laughed, shouted, and passed around bottles of alcohol. The mood was wild, unrestrained. No one was watching. No one was in control. Leia Island was known as a party spot. It had no permanent buildings, but temporary setups were built for events: bars, music systems, lounge areas. When they arrived, the air was filled with the scent of alcohol and cigarettes. Music blasted from loudspeakers. People were dancing, drinking, shouting. No one kept track of who was drinking what or how much. Angela was quickly pulled into the crowd. People offered her drinks, dragged her into conversations, toasted with her again and again. Jose Alberto stayed close to her. He watched her. He made sure she was never alone. He kept offering her more drinks. As the night went on, the atmosphere became more chaotic. People drifted around the island. Some danced. Some sat in the dark. Some disappeared into the shadows. There was no structure, no boundaries, no supervision. The last confirmed sighting of Anhilla was shortly before midnight. She was seen moving between the bar, the dance floor, and the edge of the shoreline, and then she vanished. At first, no one noticed. Guests assumed she had stepped away for some quiet. That was common. People often wandered around the island to take a break from the noise. But minutes turned into hours, and still no one went looking for her. As the hours slipped by, the truth began to settle in. Anhilla was nowhere to be found. No one could say exactly when she had vanished from the island. No one had been paying close attention. Some of the partygoers later claimed they assumed she had left early, maybe taken a boat back with someone else. But not a single person checked to confirm that. No one asked around. No one searched the island. No one even called out her name. Her phone was already unreachable, but still, no alarms were raised. No one saw it as a red flag. Instead, the party continued as if nothing had happened. People kept drinking, laughing, and losing themselves in the chaos of the night. Some might have noticed her absence, but under the influence of alcohol and a sense of detachment, they didn't act. Everyone assumed someone else would handle it, but no one did. Eventually, the energy at the party began to fade. The music softened, the crowd thinned, and people prepared to leave. Only then did a few begin to question where Anhilla had gone. But even in that moment, when it was finally clear that she was missing, no one truly searched for her. No one called her family. No one alerted the authorities. No one stayed behind to look. Maybe it was fear, maybe it was guilt, or maybe they just didn't want to be involved. The remaining guests boarded the boat and left the island behind, leaving the thick, dark silence of Leia Island untouched. No lights were left on. No one waited for sunrise. No one checked the woods or the riverbank. Anhilla was gone, and the people who last saw her simply sailed away. Back at home, her parents were growing anxious. They had planned to pick her up at 8 p.m., just as she had promised. Her father, punctual and protective, left early and drove to the parking lot outside the club where Anhilla said the gathering would take place. As soon as he arrived, he called her. The phone rang. No answer. He waited a few minutes and tried again. Still nothing. At first, he didn't panic. He told himself there might be loud music, or that she had put her phone away in her bag. He waited patiently, watching the minutes tick by. But as time passed with no reply, unease settled in. He called again and again. Still no response. The line rang, then went silent. After 30 minutes, he called his wife. She answered quickly, her voice tight with worry. She hadn't heard from Anhilla since she left the house. Not a message, not a call, nothing. Now deeply concerned, the parents began reaching out to Anhilla's friends, hoping someone, anyone, could tell them where their daughter was. None of Anhilla's friends could understand what was happening because none of them knew the truth. She had never been at the club that night. Desperate and confused, her parents tried reaching out to more people who had attended the party, hoping someone could give them answers. But no one had anything useful to offer. The confusion deepened. The fear intensified. They didn't know what had happened to their daughter, but they knew, deep in their bones, that something was very wrong. Over the next several hours, they called her over and over again, 56 times. Still, her phone remained unreachable. Then, at around 2 a.m., the phone finally rang. A call from an unknown number appeared on the screen. Her father picked up immediately, praying it would be Anhilla's voice. But instead, it was the voice of a woman they barely knew, Jose, Alberto's mother. Her words felt like a punch to the chest. She fell off the boat. In an instant, their world crumbled. What boat? What was she talking about? Anhilla had told them she was going to a party at a club. How could she have ended up on the water? Her parents demanded answers, their voices shaking with panic. But the woman on the other end of the line seemed unsure herself, hesitant, vague. Something about the entire situation felt off. Why were they only learning about this now? Why hadn't anyone called earlier? If their daughter had truly fallen into a river or lake, why hadn't someone raised the alarm? Each question only led to more dread. Nothing made sense. Nothing felt right. And although they hadn't yet uncovered the full story, Anhala's parents knew they were at the edge of a nightmare that was only beginning. Their daughter was missing, and no one had made any effort to find her. By 4 a.m., clinging to the hope that she might still be alive, they went straight to the police and pleaded for an immediate search operation. But instead of urgency, they were met with cold indifference. The officers informed them that Anhila wouldn't be officially considered a missing person for 72 hours. Until then, no formal investigation would begin. The suggestion was insulting. Maybe she was just out partying. Maybe her phone had died. Maybe she'd be back in the morning. But her parents knew better. Anhila would never disappear like this. She would never leave her phone off for hours or go back on her word. Time was running out. And they understood something the police didn't. Every passing moment was critical. If they waited, they might lose her forever. So they refused to sit back and do nothing. Her father's first instinct was to go straight to the home of Jose Alberto's family. He wanted names. He wanted to know exactly who had been with his daughter, who had seen her last, who had witnessed her falling into the water, if that even happened. But the answers he received were fragmented and evasive. No one had a clear account. No one seemed willing to speak. Meanwhile, Anhala's mother was calling every one of her daughter's friends, hoping someone could shed light on where she had been, what she had been doing. But the more people she spoke to, the clearer it became. No one had even known Anhila was on the island that night. She had kept her real plans secret from everyone. The weight of that realization was crushing. Knowing that phone calls alone wouldn't be enough, they turned to social media. By 6 a.m., they had posted her photo, her description, and her last known location. They begged anyone with information to come forward. The response was immediate. The posts spread quickly. People shared them, reposted them, and began sending messages of support. Some even volunteered to help with the search. Then came the sightings. Several people recalled seeing a large group on the island the night before. Young men and women, drinking, partying. Among them, they remembered a girl who looked like Anhila. At the time, no one had thought much of it. But now, those vague memories carried the weight of tragedy. Her parents refused to sit around waiting for official action. They went straight to the dock where the boat had launched the previous evening. There, they began questioning staff who had operated the vessel. Had anyone seen or reported anything unusual? But again, they were met with silence. No one had kept track of the boat's trips that night. There were no logs, no surveillance, no records of who had gone to the island or when they had returned. Worse still, the rules were clear. Nighttime travel on the river was officially prohibited after 5 p.m., but the boat that carried their daughter had left well after that time, and no one had done a thing to stop it. As her parents desperately combed the area, social media continued to erupt. Anhala's story exploded online, sparking a wave of outrage. People demanded answers. They flooded the police with calls and comments, demanding action, but the authorities remained silent, unmoved. Undeterred, her family pressed forward with their own investigation. They organized a group of volunteers and began scouring the riverbanks, knowing that every minute could be the difference between rescue and tragedy. But nothing could prepare them for what they were about to discover. The search for Anhila Aguirre would last 3 long, agonizing days. But on the morning of March 26th, all hope was finally, irreversibly shattered. At 7 a.m., Local fishermen spotted something floating near the riverbank, snagged in a cluster of branches. As they approached, the horrifying truth revealed itself. It was a body, and even from a distance, it was clear this wasn't a case of someone lost at sea. The lifeless form had drifted far from where, according to the group, Angela had supposedly fallen from the boat. In fact, the body was discovered several miles upstream. An impossibility if the current had truly carried her after an accidental fall. News of the grim discovery traveled quickly. The authorities were alerted, and within hours, an investigative team arrived at the scene. Anhola's parents were informed soon after. Their worst fear was now a devastating certainty. The body was their daughter's. But even in death, the questions didn't end, they multiplied. Angela was still wearing her wetsuit and, more disturbingly, a life jacket. That fact alone cast immediate doubt on the idea of an accidental drowning. A life jacket is designed to keep someone afloat, to prevent drowning, and if she had truly fallen overboard by accident, the current should have dragged her downstream, not carried her against the flow of the river. Her body being found upstream contradicted the fundamental laws of hydrodynamics. This wasn't just strange, it was alarming. The first forensic analysis only deepened the mystery. Anhola's body bore multiple injuries, deep bruises and cuts across her face and head, consistent with blunt force trauma. She had been hit hard. These weren't the marks left by rocks or driftwood. These were violent injuries, intentional ones. And there was more evidence of a possible aggressive assault, though the full details were not publicly released. Despite this, the official cause of death was listed as asphyxiation due to drowning. But even the report noted she may have been unconscious before she ever hit the water. For Anhola's parents, it was a nightmare beyond anything they had feared. They had always known something was wrong. But this was beyond tragic. This was brutal, deliberate. And yet, even with a body, even with mounting forensic evidence that something terrible had been done to their daughter, the authorities were still slow to speak. Police refused to offer clear explanations. Investigators gave vague, detached statements. No one seemed willing to call this what it was: suspicious at best, criminal at worst. For Angela's grieving family, there was no peace, only pain and a growing realization that the people responsible might still be free, and that the truth was being buried just as surely as their daughter had been. But the Aguirre family refused to be silent. In the face of devastating loss, they raised their voices and demanded justice. Publicly and forcefully, they called for answers, holding firm against a system they believed was failing them. And as word of the forensic findings began to spread on social media, the public's response was swift and furious. People across the country and beyond suspected a cover-up. The inconsistencies were too blatant, the silence too deliberate. It appeared that someone was trying to protect those involved. The initial forensic report had been damning. Angela had sustained blunt force injuries to the head and body, rendering her unconscious before she ever entered the water. But within just 2 days of that report going public, authorities announced a second forensic examination. This time, the narrative was drastically different. The new conclusion: no signs of foul play. All the injuries, they claimed, had happened after she entered the water, caused by rocks and river debris. According to this new version, her death was an unfortunate accident. They even suggested that her life jacket might have malfunctioned. It was a reversal that defied logic and ignited outrage. Angela's parents rejected the second report outright. How could such severe injuries be dismissed so casually? How could the conclusion change so drastically in only 48 hours? And above all, how could anyone drown while wearing a life jacket? These were questions the authorities had no interest in answering. Refusing to back down, Anhola's parents accused officials of corruption and manipulation. They believed powerful people were using their influence to silence the truth. They called for an independent investigation, with international experts reviewing the evidence. Their desperation resonated with the public. Online protests turned into a movement. People weren't just fighting for Anhela, they were standing against a system that had failed countless other victims. Social media exploded with demands for justice. People were convinced this was a cover-up. The mounting pressure from the public forced independent journalists and media outlets to step in. What they uncovered was chilling. Discrepancies in witness statements, missing documents, evidence that had seemingly vanished. Then came the breaking point. A major outlet published claims that the families of suspects had attempted to bribe the justice system, offering $100,000 in cash and 3 kilograms of gold to close the case. It was the final spark that set everything ablaze. Protests spilled into the streets. What began as a tragic story had become a national reckoning. Anhela's death symbolized something larger, the deep, festering corruption that infected the justice system. After months of public fury, the case finally reached the courts. But even then, justice remained elusive. In an unusual and deeply controversial move, Venezuelan authorities decided the trial would be held behind closed doors. No journalists, no activists, not even Anhola's family was allowed inside. From the beginning, the process felt rigged. The intimidation soon followed. Anhola's parents began receiving anonymous threats, calls, messages, strangers loitering near their home. The message was clear: stop digging, stop speaking. Still, they refused to back down. Eventually, the court delivered its verdict. Jose Alberto Chido and his godfather, Jose Zorrilla, were sentenced to 29 years in prison. The charges, aggression and criminal conduct, but the ruling came with a bitter twist. Every other person who had attended the party was acquitted. Not one faced consequences for remaining silent, for failing to help, or for covering up what had happened. The verdict only deepened public outrage. How could such a brutal crime be the work of only 2 people? How had everyone else walked free? For Anhola's parents, it was an unbearable injustice. They appealed the decision, demanding a broader investigation, one that would hold everyone accountable. But the system responded with indifference. Their requests were ignored. Their questions went unanswered. And there were still so many unanswered questions. Why was Anhola's body found upstream, against the current? Why didn't anyone search for her that night? Who really caused her injuries? And what exactly happened in those final moments? No one would say. Months passed. The case stagnated. But the Aguirre family refused to give up. They continued to push, to protest, to demand the truth. But behind every closed door, they found the same silence. And with every refusal, every delay, it became clearer. The full truth about what happened to Anhela Aguirre had not been told, and maybe never would be. Thanks for watching, everyone. Your support truly means a lot. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button, leave a comment, and share it with others. It really helps the channel grow. Your engagement makes a huge difference. See you in the next one.